After some time away from the wonderful little bundle of joy we call YouTube, I'm back and ready to bring you an anime that could rival that of Shinsekai Yori's psychological and dark fantasy take. You remember this video, right? If not, go watch it after you're done here. In this video, I discuss the nature of conflict and the consequences of being different in a world where there isn't much room for error. A state governed by that of psychokinetic powers. Similarly, the mistreatment of the monster rat colonies played a major role in the overarching conflict of the story that led to an aggregation of pent-up stress, romantic feelings, and an implosion of identities and self-discovery. This anime, however, is just as dark, but it's the incorporation of psychological elements such as identity, or the questioning of oneself, and the obsessive nature of a certain game that takes the reins here. If you're familiar with anime such as No Game No Life, or even Liar Liar, you're already well aware of how complex trying to understand a game you're only just hearing about for the first time is. Yet even games such as a staring contest or chess become masterfully woven into intricate games that hardly resemble themselves. Remember Tomodachi game from a couple years ago? Remember how they would explain the complexities of each game they were playing and would put that up on the screen? It was an excellent show. Unfortunately, there were too many games that only bogged down the entire premise of said games. The idea is to center the audience's focus on one thing and make that one thing well understood before moving on. This is the dilemma many game anime face. Their scope is just too broad. But what if I told you there was an anime that did this right? Enter the world of WIXOSS, pronounced WIXOSS, not WIXOSS. A world that has a much more impactful focus on the individual. I've talked about character complexities in the past and have done deep dives into specific characters. If you thought those were detailed, especially some of my more recent videos, I'll tell you now that some of those other anime can barely hold a candle to the intense level of psychological turmoil and character-centered narratives that WIXOSS employs. This anime has a source material, a real-life card game, and multiple seasons, all thanks to its dark storyline and complex characters. The first 2 seasons follow a girl named Ruko Kominato, aka Ru. The second 2 seasons, the Low Storage series, follow Suzuko Homura, and in the second season, while there's more focus on Kyoi-chan, Suzu-chan is still a vital character. Let me start by introducing the characters so that way things make sense here in a few minutes. You have Ruko Kominato, aka Ru, Akira Aoi, Yuzuki Korebayashi, Hitoe Uemura, Chinatsu Morikawa, Hanami Kage, Kyoi Mizushima, and of course Suzuko Homura. These are just the main characters and not even the supporting characters, which is a much longer list. So if you want to properly understand this anime and video, I suggest you pause now, familiarize yourself with these characters real quick, and make sure you focus as there could end up being a lot of name dropping here. So, with that out of the way, hajimemashou ka? Shall we begin? This is not your average anime series with cute magical girls, well, aside from technicalities. It's dark, and at times disgustingly sick, and we'll get to that later on. Moreover, it's psychological and forces you to pay attention and really think. What are the consequences of action X? And what happens when Y event occurs? With so much at stake in this anime and so much to explain, I'm going to jump right into this. You'll see for yourself just how dark and twisted this anime is. Side note, don't pay attention to the scores on my anime list or any list. They don't come even remotely close to accurately representing the series. Therefore, technically 5 seasons of WIXOSS in total. The first 4 are all part of the same connected story. The 5th is a spin-off, an entirely new story whose rating actually does it justice. Diva Live was really bad. I am starting with the Low Storage series, the 3rd and 4th seasons, as they incorporate the characters and plot events from the first 2 seasons into them. The Low Storage series reintroduces the WIXOSS battles the Selector Infected and Selector Spread series originally introduced, but there's a catch. This time around, each Selector has 5 coins. Each coin stores memories of its Selector. In Low Storage Incited, they would start with 1 coin and work their way up to 5 coins to win. If you win, you have the choice to alter memories of any kind, but if you lose, you disappear. The first round of these new battles were high stakes with novices and veterans alike. Many selectors disappeared while others won all 5 coins. Some tried to circumvent the rules by waiting out the 90 days the battles would take place over. but there remained a time limit on the coins. Once a coin disappeared through whatever means, memories from that selector would disappear along with it. This wouldn't be a problem if they weren't important memories, and instead things they wanted to forget, stressors, painful memories. The memories that are lost cannot be chosen. Imagine how impactful it would be to lose the memories you held so dear of, say, a childhood friend, and then suddenly, one day, you no longer remember them, but they remember you. This is the basis for these new battles, but there's also a lose condition. If a selector loses all 5 coins, they disappear. Their entire existence is erased, but not the memory of them. This is a vastly different change from the first 2 seasons of Infected and Spread, where upon losing 3 battles, the selector and Elrig would swap places. The Elrig is the heart of the cards and can do everything a normal person does, just within the confines of a card. Originally, once a selector won all 3 battles, they could have a single wish granted and would become a Mugen Shoujo, Eternal Girl, but there's a catch. Yes, another catch. Starting to see where this is going? Once a selector had achieved this designation, they could have any wish granted that they wanted. What you get for winning the game. If a selector lost the game, as previously stated, the lose condition wasn't incredibly unfavorable, the corruption of the original wish the selector made, but in becoming an Eternal Girl, the selector would then be bound by the game forever, unable to escape the consequences or responsibilities that come with such newfound power. This was the first 2 seasons. While not extreme, it was still rather dark in some ways, especially when you consider the selector and Elrig would swap places. Kiyoi, formerly Pyrelook, I do explain this, but pay attention and think about it, had a wish to save her friend, Sakaguchi, after an accident. This serves as a critical plot device for the 2 seasons of Low Storage. As an example of a corrupted wish coming true, Kiyoi's original wish was to save her friend, Sakaguchi, and restore her health. When she became an Eternal Girl the first time, her wish was granted by her Elrig, Remember. After Sakaguchi was taken off life support by Remember and thus killed, it was revealed that Remember had her own motives the entire time, and that, even though you may win the battles, there are still dark forces at play to strengthen their grip and bind the selectors to the selector battles. This is something we'll come back to later as well. That's the gist of the first 2 seasons of WIXOSS, and you're thinking that that's already pretty dark. It would be hard to imagine things getting a whole lot more intense than that. This is where I tell you to buckle up, because this roller coaster only just got rolling. WIXOSS gets dark. It gets ugly. Low Storage inside it and conflated WIXOSS pick up where seasons 1 and 2 leave off, leaving the viewer to believe the events involving Mayu and the room with white windows were resolved. To a degree, this is a correct form of thought, but in reality, things were far from over. WIXOSS, short for Wish Across, was not designed by Mayu, but instead infected by Mayu. Let me give a brief refresher and explanation. Mayu was a lonely girl. Neglected by her father, she envied those in what she deemed the outside world. One day, she was introduced to WIXOSS, but realized she could not play it alone, cooped up inside her room in poor health. She created 2 imaginary friends, Kuro and Shiro, to play with her and thus created the first system of selectors and Elrigs. When she later realized she was truly lonely and could not have wishes of her own, Shiro and Kuro asked her what her wish was: to have revenge on those with wishes in the outside world. It's around this point that Mayu's physical body died while her spirit lived on in the imaginary world she created. These make-believe games became so realistic they eventually led to the mass spread of selectors and selector battles. However, unlike the Elrigs who used to be real humans, those created from Mayu's imagination would disappear entirely if their selectors had their wishes reversed. It is this infection of the game that likely lends itself to the title of the first season, Selector Infected WIXOSS, and the second season spread of the Infection and Selector Spread WIXOSS. Now that we have the game's origins out of the way, you can probably feel this ride picking up speed. Well, hold on. The idea of becoming an Eternal Girl wasn't necessarily lost in the Low Storage series, but the stakes were significantly higher, and the reward was, generally, not as favorable. While memories are not something that can be corrupted and turned on its head like a wish could in the first 2 seasons, the stakes of losing the battles were much, much greater. As I mentioned, the Elrigs were former people. Once paired up with a selector, it wasn't unreasonable to see that sickening side to human nature. The one where someone will crush everyone that stands before them in order to achieve whatever it is that they want. This was seen when Remember was Kyoi's L-Rig and is also seen in Satomi Ko and his L-Rig, Carnival. More on that later too. The stakes were higher and there was a lot more to lose, including your life in the low storage seasons. While having a wish of whatever you want come true sounds like a great idea, the reality was anything but. A corrupted wish could do so much more damage, and we see this again with the introduction of revenge, a centerpiece to the narrative of the WIXOSS anime. If you remember the first 2 seasons, then you'll likely remember Akira or Akileki. Her wish was to extend her popularity and fame, and as an idol, complexion is the name of the game. So how does an idol's career, outside of drama and other nonsense, become ruined? Scars. This is something I mentioned 2 years ago in my selection project videos where the main character, Suzu, hid a scar on her chest from heart surgery when she was a child. The same idea applies here to Akira. Her wish became corrupted when she lost enough selector battles, and thus a large red scar formed on the left side of her face, ultimately turning her into a character hell-bent on getting revenge and against none other than Kyoi-chan, Akira's former L-Rig, aka Purolook. This drive to seek revenge follows her into the 2nd season of Low Storage and represents only a fraction of the negative emotions that fester in the hearts of humanity. Revenge is used as a significant narrative device that drives character complexities and motivations through the Low Storage seasons. Similarly, it perfectly illustrates the psychological and emotional complexities of the characters, highlighting their quest for retribution in several ways. 1. Motivation for selector battles. Characters are often driven by revenge. In the Low Storage series, this is amplified as characters are driven by a desire to settle past grievances in an attempt to fulfill their desires or enact their lust for vengeance and right perceived wrong. 2. The cycle of retribution. The re-implementation of selector battles once more only further enhances the continuous cycle of hatred and revenge, thus leading to a chain of retaliatory actions and counterattacks. This only leads to further psychological distress as characters spiral down into vicious cycles of animosity and hostility. 3. Psychological impact. These feelings of animosity, hatred, and revenge hinder the decision-making process of characters, adding to the profound emotional and psychological toll that aids their behavior. This enacts a harsh toll. The retribution the characters seek highlights the internal struggle and moral dilemmas they face. As consequences of their actions, they must now grapple with said consequences and the undying thirst for vengeance. 4. Consequences and redemption. The anime's narrative explores the consequences of revenge, pitting characters against their inner selves as they come to terms with the consequences of their actions. While this leads to introspection and self-growth, they must still break free from the chains that bind them. Used as a narrative device to encompass many of the overarching themes of the anime, its use is perfect. Revenge is nasty and consuming. It can lead to the destruction of entire lives for no reason other than to alleviate the feelings of animosity toward another. The Low Storage series implements this perfectly, and as a game, no less, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. On top of revenge, there are a multitude of other themes that are present as well. Isolation and loneliness, identity and self-discovery, desire and ambition, moral ambiguity, emotional turmoil, and trauma. These are all highly important themes, and I will mention occurrence of each if one comes up through the rest of this video, but I'm not here to talk about themes. If you want another video like that on this anime, let me know by hitting like, leaving a comment, or even subscribing. What else am I supposed to do with all of these notes? Alright, but what makes this anime so disgustingly dark, so psychological, thrilling, it's terrifying, that it's actually kind of sick? Let me start by briefly explaining that, in the intro, it should be noted that both WIXOSS and Shinsekai Yori are subjective in respect to their levels of darkness. One deals with societal concepts, while the other focuses more on the human and emotional toll driven by psychological distress. WIXOSS manages to burrow into the human mind to find what makes people tick, how they operate. Through the dangling of wishes and darker secrets hidden from view, WIXOSS explores the world of dark fantasy and emotional deconstruction. As if the games weren't already dark enough, the Low Storage series introduces a multitude of new characters, ones that all have very specific reasons for joining the battles, and this time, they aren't restricted to only female players. 2 male characters are introduced early on. Sho Narumi joins the battles after his sister, Aya, a former selector, loses all 5 of her coins in battle and disappears. The guilt Sho felt after learning of her tragic fate implores him to search WIXOSS decks until he is ultimately chosen as a selector. Aya tries to explain her nervous excitement at becoming a selector to him at first, but this excitement quickly fades when she can't even confide in him to listen to her because he's so busy. So, on the day she loses her 5th coin, she can't even tell him because he won't pay attention. After learning the truth from Satomi, his entire personality changes as he becomes dead set on getting revenge in a battle with Satomi, who beats him the same way he did Aya. This not only exemplifies the cyclical nature of destruction and psychological turmoil, it's a clear sign that one cannot alter fate and revenge, even in the most justified of instances, is just another way for the darkness of the battles to strengthen their hold on the world. This propels the plot forward with even greater momentum. The other character in mention, Shirai Shohei, is also selected, but he cannot bring himself to battle. Knowing full well the consequences of not battling means that he loses memories each time a coin fades away, he still refuses. It isn't until Chinatsu Morikawa, Suzuko's childhood friend, understands the harsh reality of the battles that she becomes employed under Satomi. She seeks out selectors so that when the time comes and they need an opponent to battle before their final coin disappears, they can be booked and have a battle. This is ultimately how Shirai-kun becomes involved with the selector battles again, played by Chinatsu, and deceived by someone he thought was a friend. The reality is that Chi is playing herself, and her connection to Shirai is shallow at best. He's a kind, gentle soul and didn't deserve to have the debilitating sickness that are the selector battles thrust upon him. When he came down to his last coin, Satomi, knowing the results of such battles, booked him with Ryo, an elementary school girl that Chi also recruited under Satomi's thumb. Shirai has no underlying wants or desires that winning the selector battles could bring, and his ultimate desire to play soccer again and athletic ability are not things that could be sequestered by them. Perhaps his role was the more ambiguous route and just there to support his friends, but in his final battle with Ryo, he purposely loses the battle. Ryo doesn't understand the true implications of the selector battles, but she wants to replace the memories of her mother's death with ones where she is alive, thinking that this will bring her back. Of course, no one thinks to tell her that the dead cannot be brought back to life by just replacing memories, and thus her childlike innocence is on full display when she cheers over her victory against Shirai, who disappears, leaving his physical body inhabited by Donner-san, his Elrig. The issue here is that Ryo was too innocent for such dark and twisted battles, yet she was involved anyways. There is really no answer to the question of why she was involved, but this is part of the reason why these battles are as psychologically grotesque as they are. An innocent child was brought into the games without understanding the full implications of winning and especially losing. Imagine for a moment the kind of guilt and emotional turmoil, how selfish it would have been that Shirai would have been racked with had he won instead of lost. This same rule applies to any selector that doesn't have profound command of the game and can't strategize a victory or at least understand why they lost. These are but a few specific examples, but what really propels the psychological influence in the anime are, honestly, the characters themselves. Let me explain. Each person is built a different way. Even identical twins don't share the exact same traits or even personality. Each person has their own inner conflict and demons they fight, but it's what makes up these metaphorical internal conflicts that matters. Recall when I mentioned the release of stress hormones during my Shinsekai Yori video and the subsequent mention in this video's intro. The reason I say that the psychological driver of this anime are the characters themselves is because each person has their own unique sense of self. When you claim that adolescent teenagers and young adults can have one wish granted if they win 3 battles doesn't seem like such a bad offer. But you have to remember the Elrics had motives of their own, and some of them only wanted to see the selector suffer, thus contorting their wish into something corrupted. Debate people like that. That specific group is not only deceptive, it's horrifyingly twisted because you don't know what a selector's wish might be. Again, think back to Hiyoi-chan and Sakaguchi.
ウィクロスもあなたみたいな人も嫌いです。
While the actual entity behind the creation of selector battles was released and Mayu set free, it's of note that her desire to see others suffer was so deeply rooted in loneliness and isolation that the battles took on a will of their own. When the battles returned for the second time, and to discover that not only were the selector's memories on the line this time, but their lives, portends to the idea that there were much darker forces at play. While to some it may look like Satomi and or Carnival were in control of the games, one might make this mistake if they didn't pay much attention. They weren't, and here's why that's important. The depiction of a physical darkness versus a psychological culmination of negative emotion is going to be handled far differently from one to the other. If Satomi and Carnival weren't simply just the facilitators of the battles, those who oversee the logistics of the games, there would be a level of understanding on how to deal with the physical manifestation of a problem. But they are. While their characters serve to exacerbate the inner struggle and external challenges of Suzuko and the others, their defeat does not inherently stop the battles. Think about when Satomi lost at the end of the first season of Low Storage, once Carnival took over his body, and how this incited a third round of battles. While selectors now start with 3 coins instead of 1, there is no clear win precedent. Even winning all 5 coins again does not actually contribute to victory, and thus, had the true objective not been discovered, selectors would have battled each other endlessly until the time limit was up, which would have only led to further psychological destruction. Second of all, the juxtaposition of physical darkness, Satomi and Carnival, versus psychological darkness, the Elric of the Beginning explores the vast world of the human psyche and the multifaceted darkness that exists within. It's precisely this interplay that defines the aforementioned internal struggles and external challenges that define the character's own emotional turmoil as they explore the WIXOSS universe and the darker aspects of their own psyches. The Elric of the Beginning was that non-physical darkness. To truly expand upon how dark and gritty this anime could be, there had to be something greater than even Satomi and Carnival. Something unseen that controlled the battles. And something that only someone who's been that deep and dark before could truly hope to be victorious against. The reveal of the Elric of the Beginning as the being with decisive control over the battles similarly lends itself to the culmination of the character's emotions, desires, fears, and even motivations. This revelation that the selector battles feed on the negative environment they've created becomes the anime's most influential turning point, as it is Kiyoi-chan who has to face her in battle. WIXOSS becomes more than just a card game. It becomes a psychologically constrained deathmatch, fueled by the consumptive loss of memories and the lives of selectors. This profound darkness portends to the increasingly complex sense of dread that begins to consume the characters. Chi-chan is the most perfect example of this early in the first season of Low Storage. Watch as the reality of her situation devolves, going from nonchalant to existential dread, hence why she teams up with Satomi, though the loss of her memories becomes an exacting toll for the pain and turmoil her decisions caused. This is an excellent case of irony, because what she worked so hard to save, she eventually lost, and thus the ramifications of her past decisions portends itself to personal accountability. I use the word pretend to mean a coming calamity or a warning that something of such nature is about to happen. In this case, it was the account of her actions. Chi-chan's character arc is another important turning point in the anime, but it lends itself more towards the illustration of human capacity, and thus the desire for reconciliation and possibly even forgiveness. All in all, trying to compare the WIXOSS series to Shinsekai Yori is a complex matter that really has no right or wrong answer to it, the darker of which is entirely subjective and based on personal opinion. But it's through the use of relatable characters and character actions that WIXOSS is able to successfully make such a profound impact. From the dangling of wishes to the subsequent use of memories as fodder, the storyline of this anime, the series as a whole, is able to evolve and delve into the complex psyche and unfulfilled desires that lingered from the first 2 seasons. To say that the WIXOSS series as a whole is dark pertains to the overarching themes of self-identity and psychological distress. Not the kind that sits on the surface, but the kind that sits at the back of your mind, waiting for the chance to re-emerge and upend everything you've worked so hard for. Truly, there is no greater darkness than offering a way out of the darkness, and then slamming the door in your face. But that is precisely what WIXOSS is able to do. It takes the idea of granting a single, anything goes wish and forces the characters, with said wish to battle others who have wishes of their own. To meet the win conditions and have that rug swept out from under you and door slammed in your face is cruel. Yet, to stand there and believe that such a profound and emanating darkness can be resolved on the first try is perhaps foolish, as it's this very complacency that leads to the second and third rounds of selector battles, with an even greater win-lose condition and more at stake. Upon discovery that the battles were fed by the negative emotions of humans and technically couldn't be stopped contributes to this. As I finally close this video out, let me ask you a question. If you had the chance to make one wish or change any memory, but you would have to navigate a minefield of others who share the same desire, would you? Would you risk throwing your life away for a chance to have a better life? As you think about these questions and what you'd be willing to sacrifice, I've already done my job, making you choose between your own desires in a hypothetical situation where those very desires could become reality. This is what WIXOSS is, and a perfect psychological thriller for a very fitting coming holiday. Happy Halloween, and thanks for watching. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing.